All right there, everyone. Great to be back with you. We have a very, very special guest with us who many of you already know, especially by way of his platform. Bill Ottman is the CEO and founder of the social media platform Minds.com. I know many of you are using Minds. If you're watching this right now on Minds, we, of course, have a page there, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already done so. I believe Minds is in its 10th year of operation. So Bill has really been on the front lines of alt tech, and he was actually invited by President Trump to the social media summit hosted at the White House back in October 2019. And he's here to talk with us about big tech censorship and the growing techlash that's growing against big tech censorship, not just here in the United States, but around the world, and the future of alt tech. So Bill, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's psyched to be here.
Oh, it's awesome. Awesome to have you. So if you don't mind, let's start with your take actually on the fall, as it were, of Jack Dorsey and the new Twitter policies that are going into effect there. Parag Agrawal is the new CEO. He appears to be even more radical. So what's your take on what we're seeing here with Twitter?
It's a mysterious situation because the timing was really pretty incredible. I mean, Dorsey resigns. He writes his blog post. I don't know if you read it, but he goes into detail about how he can feel it in his bones that, this is what's right for Twitter. And then literally the next day, they publish a new content policy blog about this, sort of distinction between public and private individuals and how you can't post media of private individuals, how do you even tell the difference between a public and a private individual at this point in like the creator world?
Right. Right. Especially in a post-Zoom world. I mean, for heaven's sakes. Yeah.
I just feel like that is a blurry line, which, and maybe there does exist some distinction, but it's so blurry that the policy is completely absurd and unenforceable. And there's just guaranteed to be countless mistakes that get made. And it will also be abused. I mean, I wouldn't, this is speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if, with recent accounts we saw banned after this policy went into effect, like the Maxwell trial tracker and the Nancy Pelosi portfolio tracker, which like tracks her investments and some of the hypocrisy with regards to her. Both of those accounts were suspended. And, it's very possible that those individuals reached out to Twitter saying, hey, we want this down because it's like personal information or whatever. And, even in the Twitter blog, they had the audacity to say that this policy would help dissidents. And I mean, I don't know what dissidents they're talking about.
Yeah, right.
But I'm pretty sure that dissidents all over the world, particularly in authoritarian countries, care about free speech. Yeah.
It's so Orwellian. The doublespeak is bizarre. There's no question about it. But there does seem to be some major techlash going on here. On our channels, we talk a lot about this phenomenon of this growing backlash against big tech and its ridiculous double standards and its censorship practices. And these articles are noticing a real surge in what we're calling techlash bills across the nation. We're seeing lawmakers, and interestingly enough, in both parties, in dozens of state houses across the country, proposing new regulations related to antitrust, consumer privacy, app store fees, all the taxes on digital ads, all that sort of stuff. What do you make of those bills? Are they all bark and no bite, or is there something to the techlash in statewide legislations?
I completely agree with the bipartisan techlash. It's pretty fascinating that everyone's sort of fed up now for different reasons. I think that the privacy backlash does actually, I think, transcend the political divide. I think most people are pissed about surveillance.
Right.
And for good reason. And I would hope that the left and the right can can come together on that issue in a more cohesive way. Obviously there's a lot of division with regards to tech regulation on the speech issue. For instance, misinformation. I mean, there's a whole contingent that wants misinformation banned. But what is misinformation?
Right.
How do you even define that?
Right.
And so I think that things like the Apple Store fee, they have this 30% fee on in-app payments, which is just unbelievable. And there have been a lot of even, pretty prominent Silicon Valley startups which have come out against that strongly, and who were not considered to be like alt tech. The Basecamp founders, for instance, they're like a collaboration workspace tool.
Right. Sure.
Their founder is just on a rampage against Apple because of these fees and the unfair play within the App Store. So I think that there's a lot of common ground on App Store policy, surveillance, monopolies within within these areas. The divide is really about how to handle the speech. And at the end of the day, I think that people just don't really understand the research and data around censorship and the impact that it actually has. I think that a lot of people think that censorship works.
Right.
And that it makes communities more safe. Right. And that if you hide this information, then somehow it's going to go away. Mm-hmm. And it's going to convince people to not look for that information. But actually, none of the peer-reviewed studies show this. Mm. They all show, I mean, granted, look, there's a lot of disagreement just on what is true and what is not true across the political divide. So, I think it's inappropriate for tech platforms to be even saying what is true and what's not. Like they're not experts on all of these issues.
No more than AT&T is, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, if anything, maybe what we're building is more of a sort of visualization of the debate, so that you can see the arguments and citations on both sides of any topic, whether it's about COVID or abortion or climate change, any hot button issue. Like don't tell the user what to think, just show them the debate.
Right.
And so, I just think that they're coming at this from completely the wrong angle. And that is what makes me feel that there is actually ideology that has infected these companies. Because data scientists, prominent data scientists know that censorship doesn't work. It's just whack-a-mole. I mean, you just go from one network to another. Like you can't actually ban these. We just saw Twitch banned a streamer for using. I don't know if I can even say it online. The C word.
Right. Right.
So but it's like people just use different words. Like if you ban one word, then the meme just will morph.
It just keeps moving. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And it's interesting what you just did there too, because I wonder what the connection is between this formal institutional censorship and self-censorship. What scholars have talked about, how political correctness actually works by creating a sentiment that I need to self-censor. There's some things I'm not allowed to say, and I don't in public because I want to keep my job or whatever it is. And I'm just curious. It's interesting to see. I wonder what the connection is between the normalcy of self-censorship via PC.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I had a bunch of crackers for breakfast. But
now we talk code.
No, I do. I mean, I just don't like. For the benefit of your channel, like I just don't know. And I don't want, it's like self-censorship is terrifying.
Right.
And that is exactly, it's this chilling effect where we are moderating ourselves and not saying what we actually think. Right. And the discourse that is fueled on legacy tech platforms is just distorted because
Right.
it's not even representative of what the community actually thinks or feels. And that's
Right.
why, I truly believe that, on Minds, like, sure, we have a small percentage of like pretty intense content, but I actually feel like people who would troll and be more aggressive on big tech platforms, like, because they're in like a free and open environment and they feel like their rights are being respected a bit more. I think that there's like a psychological reaction that happens where you just like don't want to be a jerk as much
Right.
because you feel like you're being more respected, and so you're not gonna play that game as much. I'm not saying that it's not 100% true, but I do think that in free speech environments, the dialogue actually on the long-term basis can be much more healthy.
Do you see yourself as part of the burgeoning populist movement, for lack of a better term? So in other words, populism tends to be so characterized by kind of a non-ideology. You've got populists on the right, you've got populists on the left, but the key indicator is a deep distrust of the permanent political class, the privileged class, big tech, big corporations. Do you see Minds.com as part of this just growing populist backlash, where the values and interests of the people are being reasserted over the values, interests, and concerns of our overlords, as it were?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I'm really apolitical personally, and I try to keep Minds as a company apolitical. I know that other alternatives have a different approach, and they bring politics into it a little bit more, and they themselves, and that's okay. That's their right to do. I really am passionate about bridging the divide, and like because we do have a pretty large progressive free speech crowd.
Right,
And,
right,
I think
absolutely.
more so than some of the other alternatives. I think that's so important. I really want the debate to be able to happen on Minds. I don't want an echo chamber. I want us to, I want the whole point to be to find people that you disagree with. Find the smartest people who think differently from you. Like, that's how you steelman their argument. That's how you become smarter. If you're just hanging out with people who think the same way as you, then it's just, I don't think as challenging or fulfilling.
Yeah, and Carol Swain, the scholar from Vanderbilt, has actually put forward some studies that show that's one of the ways we get extreme, is when we just go into our echo chambers, and you just don't, you lose the pluralism of conversation that tends to moderate views. So yeah, I think you're right on there.
Yeah, and just being able to handle, I mean, even if someone's not being respectful and someone is being, irrational, like, there's a really important muscle that I think the whole internet, we all need to develop, which is kind of being able to handle that.
Right. Yeah.
And that framing of being like, you go on Twitter and it's like, okay, I'm ready to like slam these people down and have my hot take and just like, pour the gasoline on. And, that's fun sometimes. Like, I'm not going to say it's not, but I really like, in terms of like the mission of like, Twitter is not facilitating healthy discourse.
Right.
They are, they're, and, same with the rest of them. They're acting like they care about, keeping everybody safe and, keeping the conversation healthy, but they just, it's not, it is a sanitized,
Mm-hmm.
just distortion of the global conversation.
Right.
And that is incredibly damaging to, the planet's ability to understand what is real and what is not real.
Yeah.
So, I just want, and that's why we partnered with people like Daryl Davis, who, befriends people in the KKK to get them. And he is a Black man who de-radicalized hundreds of KKK members because he befriended them. And he said, hey, You're a person. I'm not going to, just ban you from the conversation. I want to get in your head. I want to know why you think this way. And that puts people aback so much who are pro censorship. Like, you bring that up to them and, they think that they're on some sort of moral crusade to like clean up social media by getting all these accounts banned, but they have never, de-radicalized anybody.
Right.
They've radicalized people, if anything.
Right. Exactly.
So
that's the irony. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And scholars have taught, they've talked about the phenomenon of bootlegging in our politics, particularly in Europe. So when you have, the center right and center left sort of, establishment parties, neocons, neolibs, they don't allow for certain subjects to be discussed, say, immigration, border security, what have you. Inevitably, populations turn to what they call bootleggers, and these are guys who start third parties in so-called third parties. They have multiple parties, obviously, in the nations of Europe. So, but they'll start third parties, and they'll talk about, inevitably, because there's a market for it. As political entrepreneurs, they will talk about the subjects that the mainstream establishment has rendered, as unclean and something that we're not allowed to touch. So it just fits into this idea. Censorship only moves the problem. It doesn't remove the problem. That's probably a nice way of putting it. But let's talk about your contribution to Techlash. You've been on the front lines of this for quite some time. I didn't know that Minds.com was, am I correct, is about a decade old now, about 10 years?
Yeah, we didn't launch our first app until 2015. So it was very much like early stages, building out infrastructure, experimenting for the first number of years. So, but yeah, we've been at this since before it was even a topic, really.
Right.
It used to be that you heard almost nothing about, there was always restrictive content policies on Facebook, though all of the big tech platforms were way more open to speech.
Absolutely.
And this is sort of the hypocrisy of their history, is that, so much crazy content caused them to grow because people felt like they could go there and actually express themselves. And so they rode that wave until it became inconvenient. And so, for them to act as if they didn't benefit from this and that they're it's very disingenuous for them not to give free speech credit.
Absolutely.
So, the privacy issue. Yeah. When we first started, you couldn't even convince somebody that surveillance was a problem because the Snowden revelations hadn't even come out yet. People just had no idea what was happening with these apps back then. So, but we always knew that it just, transparency was absolutely crucial. So Minds is completely open source. So anyone can inspect our algorithms. Anyone can see our code, make sure. Most people aren't going to do this, but we're auditable. And any researcher could come in and, make sure that we're not spying on people, make sure that we're not manipulating algorithms or doing anything sketchy. And I think that on the principles space, we just knew early on that sort of radical transparency was totally necessary. And even now it's people don't fully, I think, realize how important that is, because if you, otherwise we're just guessing, right. And I do think that, there are some alternative social networks, which I think may even have good intentions, but they're asking people to trust them.
Right.
And that I don't think that is something that's really appropriate in the next wave of social media. And there's protections that you can add into your software licenses to make sure people don't, just run off with it or manipulate it. I think that there's a lot of people don't open up their code because it might not be so secure. So they're trying to hide some, bad architecture. Or that maybe they're using Google surveillance in there. I mean, like, for instance, I don't know if you saw that Rumble actually just sent a letter threatening to sue Odyssey.
Not. Oh, that's interesting.
And Odyssey posted it on
I'm sure they did.
and it was because they were having some like debate about crunching stats or active user count or whatever drama. But the point being, Rumble said that they use Google Analytics. And it's like, I don't want to come off as like some sort of like judge on the people using Google Analytics, but to a certain degree, like, for an alternative social network to use Google Analytics, I mean, that's offensive to the community. I mean,
exactly.
That's
not too alternative.
They're giving Google all the data. I mean,
right. That's
Google,
true.
You are becoming an agent of Google.
That's
when
true.
You plug that stuff into your site. And this is the stuff that people, like any website, like, you put Google ads on it, yeah, sure, you want to make a few extra bucks, but like, understand what you're doing. You are now them. Right. That is, they want your anti-Google blog to go viral.
Right.
They don't care. Right. They're going straight to the bank.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah. With their aggregate advertise model, as it were. Right.
Yeah.
Well, George Gilder, I'm sure you've read the book, Life After Google, or familiar with it, at least the basic thesis. I mean, he's arguing that blockchain is the future of the internet. And so what do you think? What do you see as the future of social media in particular, and the internet in general?
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, we are all in on blockchain. We're on the Ethereum blockchain. We have integrations with Ethereum, where we have the Minds token. You can check out minds.com/token. And then we also have the ability to post to a decentralized content storage system which is a blockchain called Arweave, or the permaweb. And essentially, so like when you go to make a post on Minds, there's a drop down on the top of the composer, and you can optionally post to the permaweb. And that is an immutable file system. It's uncensorable. Their whole goal is to build like, a library of Alexandria that can never be burned down.
Right.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. Now, there's definitely some, it's not so simple. Like, this idea of an immutable, uncensorable internet is, you have to really know and, be confident when publishing to these systems, because, forever is forever, as far as, as long as all the nodes don't go down. It's as uncensorable as it can be, but we're sort of moving into this uncensorable world. But there are you do give up a degree of control,
right,
as we move into that distributed world, because, you can't just delete something.
Right.
Our mistakes are now more permanent. And I think that is ultimately safer for the global infrastructure. So I mean, Bitcoin, Ethereum, these are immutable distributed ledgers, which, can't be changed. And that's what enables us all to not have to trust anybody, because It's just, it lives on. You can't change it. And that is reliable. So I think that there's a little bit of a paradox with this sort of decentralization and control. And, control means different things. Like, you may want the ability to remove something. And that's why we offer both options. So I don't think that it's like an either or. I think it's like you have a toolbox, and based on the context of what you're trying to achieve, you might write a blog and you decide, I want this out there forever. I know that this needs to be out there. You might have some other like more fleeting thing that you say, maybe I don't want that on a blockchain.
Yeah. I like that. I like the both and having one foot in each world, and then using it in accordance with the need of the hour, as it were. What if somebody is watching and listening here who has yet to avail themselves of minds.com? How can they get plugged in?
Yeah, check it out, minds.com. Or you can download the apps, minds.com/mobile. We have got apps for, but you can also download the app directly from us without going through the store, which some people like to do, just because why have a middleman if you don't need one?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, look, we're trying to make, you want freedom and crypto and all these incentive rewards to be just like background processes. And you want the, like, because there's a lot of good that came out of Web 2. And, I try not to, polarize the conversation too much. I do think, that YouTube and, there's a lot of genius people work at these companies. They have built incredible tools. And I think that great ideas for creating content and sharing stuff have coalesced. And that's why it almost feels like every app is like becoming the same thing at this point. Like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, like the functionality is like, there's slight variable, but it's pretty much the same thing everywhere you go. And so there's sort of like this coalescing of what people want out of an app. You want to be able to share, you want to be able to message people, you want to be able to earn money. And so we have similar functionality, but I think that we have more of a focus on, earning crypto, earning cash. We actually share our revenue with the community. So we take 25% of our revenue and just proportionally share it with all the creators who are earning in Minds Plus. And then we reward tokens to everybody, regardless of if you have Minds Plus or not. And those tokens are worth views. So one token is worth 1,000 views. You can also withdraw it and bring it on, on chain and, kind of do what you want with it. But so we're really focusing on sharing the revenue with in the resources with the creators. The creators need to come first. If the creators are what make the network fun and make there actually be an experience to have. So I think we're moving into a world where it was like network first, creators last, and now it's creators first, network last.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Well said. Bill, can't thank you enough for what you've been doing here this last decade to maintain the integrity of our national conversation here, providing a platform for people to speak freely. It means so much, especially in this hour of need. So thanks so much for being with us, Bill. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. If anyone wants to reach out, I'm minds.com/Ottman, Ottman. I think, and hit up Dr. Turley on there as well.
Definitely. Great. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thanks. Bye.